Okay, I am going to change the alternator on my 2006 Honda Ridgeline. First thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery. Actually, I'm going to pull this battery right out. Then, the night before, I put some penetrating fluid on the nuts we need to get rid of. Not get rid of, but loosen. We're going to take this nut off to loosen this so we can move the AC line out of the way. Then we got the power steering reservoir. If you look, there's a plastic track thing that just slides right off that piece of metal down there. You want to pull that, pry it with a little regular screwdriver, the clip to pry it out, and then pull up. Other thing we got to do after we get the cables and stuff out of the way is you got the tensioner pulley right here. That is a size 14 metric. What you want to do is put your socket on there with a breaker bar or something, or a piece of pipe on the end of your ratchet, and push towards the cabin of the truck, and that'll release the tension on the belt, because obviously you have to take the belt off the alternator to remove the alternator. A little rubber boot you got to pull up here. That's the cable running into your alternator, and that is also a size 12 metric. And then you have this rubber boot here. You got to pull that back, and there's a little clip you got to push on to release that. Don't just yank it off. Then you have the two bolts that hold the alternator on after you get the bracket and stuff off. There's one here, and then there's one underneath, and we'll be taking those off as well. And by the way, this 2006 service manual from Honda, pretty awesome thing to have. The previous owner of the truck bought it, and he had this whole big file of everything that he's changed on the vehicle. So that also helped me deduce that it was the alternator. I put a multimeter on the battery, and when you run the vehicle and turn the headlights on and stuff, you can see that it pulls charge from the battery, so it's below 12 when the truck is running. So that implies that the alternator is not giving juice to the battery to charge it. And you can see my hands. I am not a mechanic. My expertise lie more in aquatic carnivores. I am certified, but that's a different certification. So if I can do this on the 2006 Honda Ridgeline and am successful, that should give you courage to do it yourself, because I fear the mechanic bill more than I fear not being able to complete the task. Either way, the truck would need to be towed, because the battery is not going to give it enough power to get to the garage. So let's get started. Okay, there is the drive belt diagram for when we release the tension on the drive belt, and you can see the one with the bar on it. That is your breaker bar. That is not actually attached to your vehicle. That's the pulley that you're going to loosen, and you're going to push that towards the cab of the truck. Okay, I took this bolt off right here so I could move that around. That was a number 10 bolt. And I got my socket on the tension relief pulley, and I got this piece of pipe on there to use as my ghetto breaker bar, I guess. And I just pushed it towards the cab of the truck, and belt came right off the alternator pretty easy. Now we're going to take these two bolts off the alternator, this bracket. Those are number 10 metrics. Okay, bracket removed. Just I put it off to the side. I don't think it'll be in my way. Maybe I'll take it off from the cable, but for now it's right there. Now we got to take this bolt off. It's also a 10 millimeter. What I did with the nuts, since they were a little bit rusty, is I actually tapped the socket on there with a hammer so they wouldn't slip off and strip the head of the bolt. This bolt off the alternator bracket. Now to get the cable that's on the alternator, got to pull that rubber boot back, and that is a number 12 metric. Okay, now we got to put a 14 millimeter socket on the bottom bolt that holds the alternator on. That is this bolt right here. The bolt's on there pretty good, so I got to use the black pipe gun on my ratchet. And that seems to be working. But it took a bit to break it free. Okay, with that bottom bolt loosened all the way up, I don't think it's going to pull out all the way until I pull the alternator out. So I'm going to do the top bolt that holds the alternator with the number 12 metric. We're going to be taking this bolt off right here. See, now my hands are dirty. Alrighty, number 12 metric. Okay, she's out. Now I got to take this bolt off so I can put that on the new alternator, that bracket. Hardest part was this bottom bolt. And then, like I suspected, you had to take this one off to wiggle the alternator to get that bolt out. It's just weight and friction that's holding it in at that point. And pulling the alternator out of its home was a task, but you just bend this stuff back. Well, you don't bend it, you just push this stuff back and it'll come out. Okay, there's the new alternator, all shiny, ready to go in. I picked it up at AutoZone for 200 bucks. Just going back in there. I put some anti-seize on the old bolt, so she should thread in nice and easy. Okay, this part right here needs to slide into here. When I put it in there, it didn't want to slide in there, so I put a C-clamp on here and tightened it up, and it smushed this into each other a little bit, so it should slide in right now. Okay, truck is running, new alternator is in. See if I can do this with one hand. Yep, almost 14. The alternator is charging the battery. Prior to the new alternator, it was a little 11.8.